YouTube. Last time, this is what really got me to double check on my phone, except my audio was off. Now I have audio. I won't make that mistake again. All right, we're live.
Okay, good evening. Let us begin by acknowledging that we are gathered today in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral, present, and future territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Today, we gather with the intent followed by the Living Peace and Friendship Treaty, with respect, cooperation, and coexistence. We are all truly people. I call this first meeting of our budget process to order. It is March 12th, 2026. This is a pre-budget meeting, not, it's one to introduce the budget to the council and for the council to discuss some priorities. And I'm going to pass the meeting over to the CAO and the manager of finance to take the lead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So yeah, as the mayor noted, but I guess as the agenda did not indicate, this is our pre-budget meeting. It usually takes place a month before the actual budget meeting, and that allows staff to gain some feedback to help prepare the draft budget and to share with council our projections on revenues and expenditures for the year. So, you know, this is an opportunity for council to get a little bit of an update on what we're expecting in terms of costs and revenues from the manager of finance, and then typically in past years to share their, perspectives around the table. And then staff go away and develop a draft budget on that basis.
Okay, I did not ask for the agenda approval, and I know we have an addition to the agenda, so I just want to backtrack one step and have someone make a motion to add 2 items to the agenda.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve the agenda with the addition of an item under the MGA for contract negotiations.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carver. There's something there for the motion.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson, thank you. All those in favor signify aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. I will hand it back.
Thank
over
you.
to the-
And I was just about to hand it over to our manager of finance. So what we'll start with, I think maybe to jump in, Ashley, is just speaking to the year-end projections and the projections for the assessment roll information for next year.
Thank you. Yeah, so it looks like the printout is not the most up to date. We're showing for the summary sheet, and I'm not sure what happened on the last 30 minutes, but the summary sheet is showing a projected year-end deficit.
The electrical is, this is the penultimate version, unfortunately, that Kim printed. I caught a formula error in the electrical. The
Okay.
variance analysis in the electrical on this page is correct.
Okay.
$18,000 better than budgeted,
Okay.
but both the budget and the projected are way off. So we were actually budgeting a $61,000 surplus, and we're actually looking at a $79,000 surplus. So that differential analysis is accurate, but the whole thing is reading as a huge deficit. It had to do with the moving of the solar garden out, and I think a little bit of the recognition of RELP revenue.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it was. And then the formula, so that's my fault. I apologize for that.
Yeah, then there was a whole formula error in the other document.
That's what, yeah, okay, so bear with me on that. So that deficit, so basically for the new members here tonight, typically on a quarterly basis, the manager of finance provides an update on where we are year to date, as well as where I project will be at the end of the year. So this usually happens during the previous known committee called Audit and Finance, which is now separated into Audit and Finance. But it will, so basically it's kind of like, here's what we were Q3 last year, here's where we are this year, and here's where I suspect we'll be. Because it's mid-March, I have a pretty good indication of the projected year end, just because I'm able to kind of sneak peek into Q4, into our GRs. So these numbers I think are pretty good for where we're at. the reason why it's nice to see where we're at is you kind of get a sense of how our budgeting went relative to what we thought it would be. So when we go into our actual budget meetings in April, you'll have a little more sense of sort of where everything sits and all that good stuff. So the summary sheet is, there's obviously a lot here. Even though the summary sheet is slightly off, it is still a really good synopsis of where everything is. We will have for our budget technically 3 budgets. So we have our town budget, we have our electric budget, and we have our water budget. So we'll usually go through the town. The town also includes the fire. So that's it. The fire has its own separate budget within the town budget, but it is still included in the entire town budget. It has its own tax rate, but it's still part of the entire town. And then the utilities are separate. So you will notice once we do go through the budget process that there are several variables on the town budget that and I'm kind of deviating a little bit from this Q3 report. I'm just trying to give the new members a little insight into tonight and our first budget meeting. But you'll notice that for the town budget, we will have several variables that we can play with internally. And by we, I mean you guys. So our taxes, property tax, fire tax, infrastructure tax, and our stormwater tax. And or I guess those aren't really taxes, charges. And our idea is to have a net zero budget at the end. So, you know, I figure out what our entire expense budget is. Here's all our allocated revenue. Do we net out at the end? Are we good? That is where council needs to decide to make their decisions. For the utilities, it's a little different because we can't just automatically change the rates and bring in more revenue. We need to go to the board, or we need to apply for it. We need to, you know, show our need for it. So you'll notice in historical budgets, there are deficits that are budgeted for the utilities. And that's just because of the reality of technically, usually the rates come after the expenses go up. So it's kind of catch up. So that's just a little analysis. This Q3 report.
So I just want to add one little
Yeah,
detail,
please.
just in terms of that, you know, how council can adjust the rates, and another thing the council tends to adjust in each budget is transfers to and from reserve, and those are
Yeah.
often used to buffer impacts on rates. And, you know, one of the things we'll go over tonight is we will be transferring less money out of reserves than planned, because those monies are earmarked to specific initiatives that haven't moved fully forward in the year. So one of the different is at the year end, we have a sense of what we thought our movements to and from reserve would need to be to cover certain projects and avoid distorting the tax rates. But we find out at the end of the year what actually moved forward and what the actual impact on reserves is. And then council traditionally gets an opportunity to divert any surplus funds at year end into reserve. Because you do like to zero it out now.
Yeah.
That's done after the audit, so we haven't actually done it in a couple of years, but we will be doing
We're
it
getting there.
essentially 3 years at once.
Yeah, it's we're almost up to date with all our audits. So we will be
Actually, just a quick
Yeah.
question, and it's just a stupid question.
no
Budget year end,
questions.
budget year end is March 31st.
That is out of order. That is unparliamentary. That word is not welcome at this table.
You're in trouble.
You can say, I've heard people say, maybe I'm naive, but that is more appropriate.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'm more naive, but actually, no, my question is just clarification. The budget year end is March 31st, right?
Correct.
Great, that's what I.
That's a good
And
question.
it's actually quite a
That's
good question, because
Yeah.
much of the Canada municipal year end is December 31st.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah, in
wondering.
Ontario it is. for example.
Yeah, here it is, and that's, well, I wouldn't get into it, but that's part of the reason why the FIRs are all backlogged. But anyways, so we have our Q3. So I think probably we'll give you guys a second to take a look at the summary sheet. And if you have any questions, I guess would be the best thing. I don't know if I necessarily need to
I
go.
think it's worth going down through the variances, because it's at such a high level.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I don't mind doing it, you can do it, I'll jump in if you just wanna go down. And
Yeah, sure. So our operating revenue, so the way that I like to look at these is, and this is why I present it this way, is I'm showing the mirror quarter of the prior year. our actual, the quarter that we're discussing this year, what our budget was last year. Don't confuse it with our 26-27 budget, which you'll see in a couple of weeks. And then where I suspect will be in the end. So you'll notice that the revenue for the town, so again, that would include the taxes, that includes the infrastructure charges, anything like that. So we budgeted 4.1. At Q3 right now, we're 4.2, and I envision we'll be closer to 4.3 by the end. So that tells me that we had more sales of properties, more, what's it called? Transfer fees, yeah, transfer tax, so that we usually come above. I usually budget the same every year, and then if we are above, great, we get more revenue, thumbs up. So that's typically where we'll see a material difference in the revenue. We already know what the taxes are. We know what the infrastructure charges. It's based on units here. So yeah, you might see that. We may sell a couple things here and there, maybe some equipment. It's not frequent that we sell equipment. We usually, if we do, it's a trade-in basis and we're spending money. So, but that's usually where the revenue would shift a little bit there. We do break out fire because that is of interest to everyone. And like I said, it's still under the town, but it's like, you know, an arm off of the town. So budget, we said 836, we're looking at 716, and I do think we'll come in around 839. So some more donations will be there, a couple things that usually come in towards the end of the year.
And Ashley, the
Yeah.
fire is the rates for the out of town services. And what
Yeah.
else?
So the fire tax, the out of town
Yeah.
services, any donations, from the society, any donations the society provides us, I guess they backfill sort of some of the long-term debt. That's not really revenue, that's just backfilling the debt. I'd say that's about it, yeah. There's not a lot of stuff coming in that side. And then water, so these are projections. So basically for the water, we basically look at the prior year and try to increase it by CPI or somewhere's around there. Water's a little harder to calculate. Electric, I feel like we're able to really dive into the revenue for the budget because we have the usage. We have just a little more information on the electric side. But for water, we're budgeting 723. Right now for Q3, we have 537, and so we look like we should be on target for about 724.
So I rent, so I don't know, is water metered?
Yes.
Okay, so you have a pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's just our reporting devices, at least, like we have the information, but for electric, just because we've gone to the GRA or we've gone to do a GRA with the board, we just have a lot more, I feel like we've developed a lot more specific reporting that we're able to really dig into the usage and the wattage and sort of the trends within the town and what months. So
GRA is a general rate application, if you're not aware.
thank you. Yes, and we will be.
That's with the.
Utility Review Board.
Yeah. And then we will be going for one for the water, hopefully this year, I think, once the audits are up to date, so.
Have to have a current audit, so.
Yeah, so it's kind of lagged a little bit, but, and then I think we'll probably have just as much of an in-depth understanding as we do about the electric. We've just done a lot with our electric utility and the reporting, so there's just, I feel like we're almost little mini experts downstairs on this kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Well.
You sit in front of the board, you learn a lot. Yeah, and same with electric. So the budget 3.1, we do expect to be just right about there at the end of the year.
So without the transfer tax would be negative.
Sorry?
Without the transfer tax would be.
I mean, you mean completely remove it or just above what we budgeted? So.
You said it's the projection included the transfer tax.
Yeah, so I always budget about 175,000. And right now, yeah, we're about double that, so that there was we've had a few big,
Well, I think what Councilor Paul Freeman is referencing is that since we have almost $200,000 in extra transfer tax. And we don't have $200,000 more revenue overall, there are other revenue shortfalls that bring it back
Mhm.
down, right?
yeah, I mean,
Now, down under surplus deficit, we are projecting a surplus that would be higher than according to these documents, that would be higher than the deed transfer revenue. So that doesn't imply that deed transfer revenue is necessary to keep us alive.
mhm.
But I do think I need to now, when I'm looking at this, double check the interaction of the fire and town a little bit. Because I'm not quite, I'm struggling to track something here, but what I understood from this document actually was that even with the deed transfer revenue removed, we were looking at a surplus, not a huge one, rather than a deficit. But I'm now wondering if there's a couple of errors that I'd like to make sure are not errors before we get there.
Yeah, well, just, you know, on the back of an envelope, it looks like the variance is $100,000. If you attribute all of that variance to the deed transfer tax and take that away. That's just the variance of the deed transfer tax, then we're still $250,000 to the good, give or take.
Yeah, that's what's implied certainly by the bottom line surplus deficit line, yeah. I'm just not trying to be weird about what I'm wondering here, I'm just,
No,
I think there's a formula error in fire, but I think it balances out because anyway, we can look at that, but the line for the fire that's pulling here is the subtotal. It's not the full total. So when you
The
look at the
60?
summary sheet, you're getting a distinction between the total revenue at 839 projected and the expenses at 533. And it's because it's pulling the subtotal, it doesn't include the hydrant charges. But I think that comes out in.
Oh, I see what
because
you're
there's totals
saying.
don't total this spreadsheet, they total from the pages in the sheets.
yeah,
So I'm thinking that
it's
might look
pulling,
noticeable, but not affect the surplus deficit, and because I'm looking at a document, I can't check the math.
so,
But usually it actually totals the sheets to the summary rather than totaling the summary on the summary, which in an Excel document means that you miss that error if the error is just in the presentation on the summary, it wouldn't be material. I can't confirm by looking at the document, so we'll double check that one.
yeah.
Do you see what I'm referring to?
I do, I'm just trying to quickly look.
It
Might be an offline,
It's just
yeah.
a projection, we'll come back to it.
Okay. One thing you'll notice is, and this is something that council has talked about for a while, we're working on it, that these are very manual processes. So errors in documents, if you do see something, let me know, because there's a lot and it can very quickly, the formulas can be very, like if Dylan says, Ashley, do something here, and I do it, and then it just doesn't flow through. So if you see something, no offense is taken, see it, say it, so we can fix it, so that the final document is,
Well, we really don't want the
perfect.
final approved budget to have any of those errors.
yeah, exactly, so.
At this point.
I mean, if you're sitting
Decisions.
home and you see a bunch, send me a list. I'm not offended. I want the end.
Normally Joe would have picked over this one.
Joe.
Yes.
But in any case, yeah, so please, by all means, if you see something, say it, because we want to make sure that the end document is correct, so you guys have all the correct information to make your assessment on. So, okay. So operating expenses, so fire looks like we are under budget, and I do think we will continue. There wasn't as much spending this year as normally. I think there was a wave of some spending, and I think they have like their uniforms all up to date. They have their masks. They have all the things that they've needed in the last couple of years. I think that the chief has done a good job in making sure everything is not outdated and it's up to speed. So it doesn't seem like there was as much this year as normally.
Did they receive any funding from the province this year? Or like there were so many years they're eligible for the
I think this was a
The
by
safety
year,
gear.
they didn't get it last year.
okay.
Yeah. They also they had a big training program 2 years ago where they invited other departments to come in
Yeah.
and they split the cost, and there wasn't as much interest this year, so that didn't happen. So I think that kept the cost down as well, so. Protective services, so we're about 353. I do think that we will come in on budget there. Yeah,
Yeah, just going back to fire, we
Mhm.
know that legislation is going to be passed soon. And there are going to be certain guidelines for training. Do we know if our department has to take up a lot of training, or are we have that basic training that they're requiring?
We were still tracking that. I think there are training opportunities to be had, certainly.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's been this big discussion about,
Right,
will all firefighters have to have that basic training?
and who's paying for it?
Yeah, and we don't necessarily have compliance with those requirements.
Okay,
Yeah, so there may be some training coming.
Yeah, my other question is reading through that fire proposal is, they wanna do away with fundraising.
that's not true. If you listen to the minister, and I listened to her reading of the bill, second reading. That is a false thing that was put out on social media and people picked up on. They have not said that fire departments cannot do fundraising. Now, it may have tighter oversight by the province, I don't know, but that is not, this lottery that the firefighters lottery that a lot of people are supporting. That is she said that was safe, fundraising bingos and whatnot were
Yeah.
safe, so.
Yeah, and brunches and all that.
Yes, yes, that will be needed.
Yeah.
I imagine that would be the worst idea to
Yeah.
take that away.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah, well, that's.
that'd
good
be
because-
shooting themselves in the foot.
Because they're a substantial amount of money is.
That 50-50 is, I think we all participated.
To win.
Right, it's my turn soon,
Yeah.
right?
So there may be some unexpected, we don't know whether the province is going to offer a package for training to get all these people equally trained at a certain level across the province or what, so that
And
kind of
expenses we
information.
manage.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess for budget, we'll have to keep that in mind. I haven't heard anything from the chief in regards to any type of increase on that side, so I don't know if we wanna put something in to pad it, or we wanna just, expect a potential.
Well, yeah, we've got a month to keep track.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
and
we'll
and
take
it's a
that.
great area.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely something to flag. for
Yeah.
that.
Protective services, like I said, I do expect us to come in on budget. The majority of that expense is our CMP, so we have the bill, we know the bill, we pay quarterly, so it is what it is, and that's what we pay for. Other protective services, so that's more like Remo, and what else do we have here? If we were to use the fire hall as a comfort station, sometimes we allow a little money there. Fire
By law enforcement.
by law enforcement, yeah, things like that. So, yeah, so I do expect us to actually come in under budget there. We haven't used all of that, so. Okay, so, I'm just trying to, transportation services, that's public works. So that is all our boots on the streets, keeping this town to look as beautiful as it is. So, I actually expect us to come under budget for that. So there's been, so that's good. It's never bad to come under budget at the end of the year. Environmental health services. So that's wastewater. So we have some fun names for everything. And this basically, the reason why we have these is because this is what matches the FIR, which is our end reporting with the audit. So it's just to align our budget with the FIR reporting. So, but as Councillor Carver has asked, in the budget, you will see it is kind of the real name of it and then the FIR required name. So it is a little bit more clear. So for everyone that doesn't live in FIR world. So yeah, so environmental health services, we do expect to come under budget there. Budget at 500, we're going to be around 483. Environmental development, we look like we will be slightly under budget there. Rec and culture, we budget at 182. For Q3, we're at 139, and I expect us to come in around 165. general government, so that's like admin, and I'm just trying to give the new counselors just a little color into what is on this. So that is council expenses, the mayor's expenses, administrative expenses, our finance expenses. So all our office expenses, our overhead, that type of thing is in there. So we budgeted almost $1 million. We're gonna come in a little bit over that. Fiscal services, so that has the majority of the driver for that one is our education. So again, that's a pretty large bill that we get.
Fiscal services is education?
It's under there, it's under there.
It's the provincial appropriation to fund education.
Yeah,
So
the
for us, it's just a
mandate,
transfer to the province.
yeah,
Okay.
so,
What the HRM refers to as their provincial property tax rate in order to help people understand that in fact, that money doesn't go to us, it's just a provincial appropriation out of our tax base.
yeah, so, that's the majority of the driver on that one. So, and then we have some debt charges in that as well, so that, so 1.1 is what we, budgeted for, and the projected year end is gonna go just under 1.1. So that is basically the town. So again, the town is all of our services, except for the utilities, so public works, wastewater. Wastewater sometimes gets confusing because our wastewater is under town, but when you think wastewater, sometimes you think water utility. So, but it's actually separate. So all the expenses for the wastewater part of what the water utility workers do is all billed under the town.
Rec and culture.
Mhm.
Is that where our grant monies come from?
Yeah.
And also like any money we give to like, the soccer, program.
So it doesn't, it's
United.
not necessarily everything is under there. If I'm looking right here, sometimes they're under a little bit, like Lunenburg County Wheels is under there. The swimming pool operation, yep, that's Mahone Bay United's under their sports field operation. Then the ones that we do, like the library, the heritage properties, so
Oh,
the
okay.
museum. So, yeah, and then we actually have a line at the very bottom with the miscellaneous grants to the organizations. So you know how we have the big
Yes.
list of grants, so
Mhm.
all the sort of less material ones, but still very important, are at the bottom of that. But then above sort of lists out the larger donations, like to the swimming pool and to Mahone Bay United.
So roughly, somewhat more than 50% of these expenses are non-discretionary from our point of view.
Yeah,
It'd be useful to know what the actual figure is.
like carving out the RCMP and the education,
Well, it's more than that, by the
Well-
sounds of it.
yeah.
You arguably you could include fire into it.
Yeah.
We have no choice, but.
Well,
there's
that
revenues.
that one's kind of being debated right now.
Yes,
And I have no comment. So, but yes, no, that's a fair point. There are a couple of things that were just, it's passed along to us and we pay it and that's the rules.
So we could try, you know, if that's something council like to look at, here's the narrative highlighting some of that in the communications on the budget this year.
I think it's
useful. Good point.
Mhm. I mean, they're very material, so if we can carve out the percentage of non-discretionary, as you put it, funds, that would be something I think that the residents would be very interested to know, so. Okay,
And that water and electric are rates that are set somewhere else, we're not in charge of.
Well, we apply for certain rates and increases.
But they have to be approved for.
Yes.
and there's a substantial lag, I would say. Well, I mean, there's many different ways that we can increase the rates. The GRA is the big, here's our forecast for the next many years. This is what we foresee our capital expenses are gonna be, and this is what the rates need to be. But when NSPI increases theirs and it flows through to us, those things we can easily apply for and usually within a month have that. So, but the GRA, I would say, would take at least a year.
It's also the only form of water increase.
The GRA is, sorry, yes, the GRA for the electric is, well, NSPI, yeah, so. But yeah, no, it's the time is a factor, I think, when it comes to rates, and that the expenses go up, then we apply because the expenses go up, and then we get the rate.
Playing catch up.
And it costs, I could go on forever about this, and I have, but it also costs a substantial amount to apply for these things.
Been about 5 years since we had a water rate
Like a
increase, and if you take the water rate increase spread over 3 years, you have 8 years of cost increases to make up for. So, you know, you have 3 years to spread across 8 years of cost increases, so we probably end up with these double-digit increases for each of the 3 years of the period.
And
And
we're
that's why
actually-
almost every municipality in Nova Scotia that has gone through a water rate application in the past 2 years has been seeking 30% plus increases. Liverpool, I think, or Queens just went for a massive one, Halifax had been. But the province intervened on several of those at the regulator, and in Halifax's case, forced it down considerably, and actually forced them to write off debt, because they essentially said, we won't let your rates be sufficient to collect this prior year debt. And so that's a concern for us, because we have been accumulating prior year debt. And you would expect the board to say, let's make you whole over a defined period. They're allowed to go up to 7 years to pay back the prior debt. But the province has intervened in other cases and said, no, the municipality will absorb the utility debt. And it just pushes them into the tax base, but
Mhm.
which is unregulated, so of course.
Our partners with area, we have met with the former Minister of Energy to ask about reducing or eliminating this rate and this fee we pay in order to go in front of the utilities. And we still have, that was in October, we met with the minister, we still don't have a response. Now, there's been a change of ministry, but we still don't have a response to our questions.
And we've written a couple more
Yeah.
times since, yeah.
Yeah, we're certainly advocating.
But it costs us a lot of money because we have to have a lawyer, hire a lawyer for that, and you'll probably meet Jamie at some point in the next while. And, you know.
And
he does most of
consultants
them.
as well.
Yeah, and consultants, and it's like a court case.
Yeah.
You have to prove your case, and it's very costly.
And then that just gets added onto the rates, so it's
Yeah, exactly.
continuous, it intuitively, it just seems like there could be a better way, there should be a better way, but yeah, I could go on forever and ever and ever with that, so. But I won't, because we're all gonna go home before midnight tonight, so,
And as Joe points out, we'll probably do 16 more hours in April, you know, as we traditionally do.
Exactly, which I-
Hopefully, but, you know, usually it is a 12-hour minimum process.
I would say that, Town of Hope Bay takes the budgeting process very seriously, and it's not a bad thing, because it's an important document, and a lot of good questions and a lot of great discussion occurs, so. I mean, it takes us several meetings, but it's gotta be done, so. It's my favorite part, so. Okay, so water, now, Dylan, I just wanna make sure that the revenue you pulled, 724, I just wanna make sure I'm reporting the right numbers.
The water is fine.
The water's fine, okay. So, just making sure. So the Q3 year to date, right now we're at 537, we've budgeted 723, and I see us pretty much bang on. That's typically something that doesn't much deviate from it, we know the users,
Well,
we
the
know.
managers are really conscious of cost control. I mean, Scott's doing everything he can to keep
Yeah.
it lower. It's just when you go into a year with a projected deficit of 244,000, landing on a deficit of 231,000, which is a good performance on Scott's part, still is a deficit of 231,000. So there is good cost control there, but you can only do so
There's
much.
I'd say all the managers, yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, everyone seems to be very conscious of, there's a lot of shopping around, and they are very good at doing that, so they spend a lot of time trying to save money.
I have a question
Yeah.
about, so some of that difference in the water is expenses. I mean, things are more expensive and costs are
Yeah.
increasing all the time. But what component is there of the water loss? The water that we're treating and that
Mhm.
we're losing? I mean, do we have dollar figures for that?
So
Yeah.
it was quantified, we had an external study now probably, what was it, 5 years ago?
Yes.
They estimated, I think, about $30,000 was the value.
Yeah, the way to look at it, Penny, is you go to the variable costs, which is largely the treatment costs and the pumping costs.
Right, yeah,
And take whatever they are. And if you cut them in half, if you could take the water losses from 50% to 0.
right,
that's what
okay,
you'd say.
okay.
And it's up, I mean, in today's dollars, it might be up to 40.
But that's not in here, as an actual dollar out.
But it's
type.
sort of implicit in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess really the chemicals that we purchase to treat the water before it hits the pipes to be lost would be reduced had we, or at least be, the full money would be spent appropriately if we didn't lose some of it, but I guess in that sense, but there's no.
And it's reflected in loss of income. I mean,
Yeah,
less income than we,
No, you.
no, not loss of income, higher expenses, because
Higher
we're
expenses.
treating water that we're not actually then bringing to
We're
the
not-
homes to use, so we're spending money
yeah, okay.
to treat 100% of the water, but not 100% of the water is making it,
Charge back.
is making it to, yeah,
So our
That makes-
guesstimate is 30 to 40,000.
yeah.
They have noticed a change in the leakage, it has decreased. And the drought has helped that because it showed spots where we had leakage. Yes, they had green grass. And so that's what it was leakage. So I think back behind the seniors housing, there was an area there that was quite green and several others. So, and I overheard a conversation today with Scott with somebody and he said about leakage being down. So, yeah, that's a good thing.
That's a very good thing, yeah. So. And then the electric, so we budgeted 3.1 and we will expect to bill and receive around the same. And then the expenses, I think this is possibly where it pulled in incorrectly.
Yeah, as well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just pulled incorrectly, there were just things I actually had to change.
So
But,
3.3 is what the projected expenses
So the version that they received electronically
would be the correct
should
one.
match the one that I
3.3.
sent you.
Yes, so
Yeah,
that's
it's
3
still-
point, right, that's 3.3. So we would. Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the Excel document, but I'm also looking at the paper one that I gave you guys to try to bridge the gap, but. We're looking at, right now, we're projecting a surplus of $80,000, so.
Yeah, but it's just basically the year we expected with good cost control, there weren't really a lot of things that came out.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson?
When we built the electrical budget last year, did we build it in the way that reflected the ownership of the solar thing? So that the
Yeah.
cost of the solar in the cost, but the electricity generated is basically free.
Yeah, so it just removed the purchase entirely, yeah.
Here's my,
Councillor Carver?
here's my question about the very bottom line here, the surplus deficit. You just said the surplus was 80,000 roughly.
Yep.
But what's this number down here?
So this is an old copy,
Oh,
and when it was printed
that
off,
was the mistake.
it was
that-
printed
that's
off this
the-
evening, the incorrect copy was printed off,
If you
so
look at the one that came through with the email,
that
Right,
was the
yeah,
correct
I
version,
did
yeah.
look at that one earlier, but
yeah,
I was mainly looking at the paper.
Yeah, so this is this
Now, I
is
mean, there are a few lines throughout this where revenues are recorded because we have every reason to believe they will come through and we have billed them and, but there are some that, haven't been kept up to date. I will say this is not a statement of cash flows. This doesn't represent that every bill we send out to every customer is paid. So, keep in mind that the year-end projection doesn't suppose that we will have collected all of that revenue from a cash flow perspective. But of course, we would still record things that have been billed as coming.
And that would be the same for some of the grants that we are going to receive once all the FIRs are up to date. There's no secret, some of those have been held back for a couple of years now, so we will get the money. We have been promised the money. We just have to make sure everything.
So these
is
are
up to
the
date.
unconditional grants. The conditional grants we still get because they're based on movement.
Yeah,
purchase,
but the Canadian
the
community,
unconditional grants, which is the Canadian Community Building.
Pay gas tax.
Tax foundation grant from the province.
Yeah.
Those are withheld until we get our FIR up to date. So a couple months from now, we should get those. It's not a huge sum of money, but it does, it just makes cash flow better.
yeah, so just, I guess, keep in mind that this isn't as the CEO just said, this isn't a cash flow analysis. It is a statement of revenue and expenses, so it's not 100%. There is a timing difference, and yeah, if once we finish up our audits in the next couple of months, we should have all our FIRs filed and stamped, and all of everything that's been held back for the last couple of years, we should get. So it'll be a nice day to have a glass of champagne.
Yes, Councillor Paulson.
Are we going to get into the electrical utility later on in more detail?
Tonight or during the budget process? We certainly can. If you have any questions, that's probably a better way to approach it.
Wait until later? Or-
Well, yeah, if it's commentary, like you wanna say where you think the budget should go about it, then you could wait and it would go around, or if it's just questions, then take them now.
Well, it's more of a broad picture, and maybe I got hold of the wrong end of the stick here, so you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but on the information on the that was provided, we get roughly our source of power, roughly 45% from Nova Scotia Power, and the rest comes from wind and solar. So we are paying.
What page are you on?
I'm on page, what is it? I'm right at the end here, 62. Mm. So it's at the top of the page, so our source of power.
No, power purchase.
And that's, and again, correct me if I'm not right, but our charge out to residents is pretty close to the Nova Scotia power rate, because the Nova Scotia power rate is roughly 50% of our costs anyway. And then on top of that, we have to pay Nova Scotia Power some backup fees. I don't know if they're in here or not.
They should be in the cost.
Okay, so then, okay, so that's where we get it from. And then we have some costs. So the operating cost of the utility is going to this projected year and 699,717, that's the next page. And the administrative costs on the following page are $307,000, $290,000. And then there's bits and pieces. So basically, to operate our utility, we're paying $1 million for 45% of the power.
Well, no, because our utility's primary purpose isn't generation. Like generation is a very small part of those costs, actually, there's lower driving costs and most of the financing, and then there's $25,000 a year of insurance and $20,000 a year of maintenance.
No, the point is that if we didn't have an electrical utility, we wouldn't have $1 million cost or thereabouts.
Well, I mean, those costs are paid for by rates, so they'd be paid for by Nova Scotia Power's rates.
Precisely.
The resident rate would not be different.
Why not? We wouldn't have the responsibility, Nova Scotia Power would.
Well, I mean, if your suggestion is that like Nova Scotia Power would simply provide all of the oversight of our utilities out of their exact, initial starting position and then pass those savings on to our residents. I mean, it's a lot of supposition, I guess, that's very, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the proposition is that they would be charging exactly what we're charging at the moment. But it would be their responsibility 100%.
But what they're charging our residents at the moment is relatively in parity with what we're charging our residents at the moment.
Precisely. So whereas the advantage to our residents to have our own generation, which produces no real dividend to us, at a cost of $1 million+
Have our own utility, just for clarity, because the generation isn't what we're. Right, like the generation doesn't cost $1 million.
No, the administration and the operation of the utility does.
I think the justification for our utility costing the same amount to customers and providing a higher level of service is usually what council's discussed. Like, we've never really said our utility was going to be charging residents less than Nova Scotia Power.
Yeah, but it comes back to the same issue. What's the advantage to our residents in rates? There is no advantage,
No.
what it boils down to.
No, there's no advantage in rate
Right,
at the moment,
right.
but there's a significant advantage, as you all noticed a couple of months ago, when I had no power for 3 days, you had power for the time period. And that happens more frequently than not. And there's the advantage that we are compliant with provincial regulations about very clean energy, and NSP is not, and are paying fines regularly because of that, and et cetera. So those are just two of the reasons why.
My understanding is there is no requirement on small utilities to meet provincial clean air requirements. There is for Nova Scotia Power.
I don't know about that.
If we go on the municipal tariff and purchase 100% of our energy from NSPI, we're automatically in compliance because they're the one who are required to meet that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you take that for, that's how you would say it doesn't actually apply to us, yeah.
Yes.
To Councillor Wilson's point, like, I think some of the other service benefits are not well understood. For example, we get to decide how our trees are maintained in this community. Whereas in other communities, those trees would be clear cut 10 feet from the line because that's the standard. You know, we spend for that and manage to still achieve relative parity on rates while having a nuanced service to, you know, deal with the free canopy in our community, just been expressed as a priority. I mean, I don't mean to get into a debate to defend it. I wanted to point out that the rate justification has not traditionally been the justification for our utility.
As a budget item, it's still costing us $1.1 million to run our own utility, according to these documents.
But if I may, Your Worship, it is, we know we have an outstanding study that we've applied for with the province to look at the whole situation writ large, partly because of Councillor Pelfman's arguments about this, which are ongoing, we've written before. And I don't think tonight or in the next 2 months, we're going to decide to sell the utility. So I'm not sure of the value of debating it tonight.
I think that's quite correct. There's sea changes going on in the electrical utility business in Nova Scotia as a whole. We don't know how it's all going to break out in full. It's more a matter of awareness, I think, of the focus that we have on this particular item of our budget, which is a very significant part of it, that's all. So as we move forward, I think we've got to keep this on the table.
Councillor McCarron?
Have I got this right? We're not losing money by having a utility.
Yes, we are. We would be. It depends whether we have a cost, not a loss. Cost.
But it would cost us much more if we were buying all our electricity from.
No,
Nova
we're paying the
Scotia.
same. Residents are paying the same rates essentially.
But the town itself would be paying much more.
Yes, but would be no. Nova Scotia Power will be charging the rates. Nova Scotia Power will be responsible, as opposed to the town having its own windmills, own solar farm. That's the difference.
Okay, but that doesn't answer, we're not losing money on it. It's not costing the town of Mahoney.
I think the simplest answer to that is the utilities projected surplus for this fiscal ending March 31st is $81,000. Means the utility ran all of its operations, covered all of its costs, and at the end of the day, generated $81,000. So the water utility, which has like almost $250,000 deficit year over year, is definitely costing the community money. Now, as I mentioned earlier, notionally, that's supposed to be able to be built into future rates to ensure that the taxpayers don't cover those costs, but the province has intervened in that in other communities of late. But the water utility I think you could make the case is actually at the moment at risk of costing residents money.
But in the case of water utility, we have no alternate and no option. But that's our source. There are other sources of power. And Liverpool is getting some directly instead, apparently, instead of going through Nova Scotia Power. It's the administrative costs boil down to extra staff requirements here to manage the finances of that. Those are costs to the town. The town's budget.
Can I just, in the absence
Yeah.
of Councillor Feeney, I don't want to spend too long on this, but I'm just gonna say one of Joe's usual things, which is the way that Councillor Paul Freeman is explaining the utilities overhead costs is to suggest that they otherwise might not exist. But in practice, the utility actually covers a portion of my salary, a portion of Ashley's salary, a portion of the office salaries downstairs. And because those are not elastic to the existence of the utility, they're market salaries for our physicians that are already below market rates in the province, there wouldn't be an expectation of savings on those positions.
I'm not sure about that.
Oh, Councillor Carver, sorry.
Yeah, I wonder if we can sort of file that information for future reference and carry it forward and not turn the budget discussion into a debate about the value of the electric utility. That's as Councillor Wilson had suggested.
Okay.
So just file for future reference.
Councillor
Thank you.
Boo?
And yeah, and I just wanted to add that Sir Wilson had also put together some motions back in February 25th to do like a deep dive into the solar garden and some of these things. And I think that those, I'm assuming that that work is gonna give us maybe some insight on maybe some of these questions.
I would hope so.
So I don't know what the timing of that is, but it would be helpful, I think, if we would be able to get some of those insights as we're doing the budget.
I think inevitably, we have to.
Yeah.
But this is a budget meeting, it is a budget item,
Yeah.
and that's why I bring this up.
Yeah,
To get it on the table.
And as the mayor just asked me to point out, Councillor Wilson did bring a motion to have the solar garden cost be the subject of the special report, which is expected to be your next regular meeting council, so it'll come before.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. Or move back, I don't know. So
Well-
does somebody else have an area they
Yeah.
needed, wanted to have clarification on?
Oh, are you asking
Or
for questions?
discuss? Yeah. Did you have some
I
questions?
had a few. What's the background of that change of 1 cent in the fire rate?
So,
What page are you?
That was page 3, when I was on the computer.
Okay.
yeah, no, that's a great question. So, last year during budget, we increased the fire rate by 0.5 cent. And then, I'm not sure 100% the details, but
You had it pretty well covered in your note, I wouldn't really go further. than
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Council did decide this
So-
summer,
so.
go back on that increase.
Right, so August 15th, 2025, council passed a motion to take that increase off the budget for last year and instead increased it by 1 cent this year. So instead of 0.5 cent last year and 0.5 cent this year, we removed the 0.5 cent last year. And then we are applying for the full cent
Why?
this year.
So the simplest explanation is we had not provided a great deal of notice to our
Okay.
outside areas. And
Uh-huh,
felt it
okay.
was more appropriate to give them the notice and have it take effect next year.
So that was within,
So now they know.
okay, that was within 2 or 3 months after the
Correct.
completion of the budget. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It
That
had,
helps.
it was the July 9th meeting or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty quickly after.
It's the night that I had 3 meetings all at the same time scheduled, I remember that. Yes, Council Wilson.
Further to Councillor Carver's question, which I thought was a good one. I wonder if, in the light of the fact that the fire costs this year show about $100,000 positive variance. I guess we don't know, well, as we go through the budget, we'll find out if we could take that cent off, or will we actually need it
this coming year.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at that in the, development of the budget, like, was it just kind of some things that get deferred that will end up, or deferred that will end up being next year, and it doesn't really represent a year-over-year saving or not? And then the new costs coming from training and things that the mayor referenced earlier, will that offset it? But definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, I'll keep the cent in there just because it was passed, and then you guys, I guess, can decide your preference once we get, but yeah, no, that was a really good question.
No, I think it's up to you, what the costs come in as,
Yeah,
It's not that you pass the need.
Can I keep going down my list,
Yeah,
or do you want to go around the table?
Yes, and name the page you're
Okay,
referring to.
it's a little tricky. So my next question is, I think, on page 5 of the hard copy, page 4 of the digital. How is the stormwater charge assessed and paid?
so the stormwater charge.
Question.
So the stormwater charge is billed, it's still under infrastructure charges on the bill, but when you receive,
Okay, so it's in the infrastructure.
correct,
It's the
so
same as the 300.
Okay.
it's just broken out into 2 different reserves now.
Okay. The text, the note that goes here is somehow weird, credit off of on a resident. The words are.
Credit on
odd.
revenue is charged in it, so the reason for that is because what we budget, which this infrastructure charge, we know the units times the rate that we decide. But because we're coming in slightly under what was budgeted, it's because there was an individual that had a landlocked piece of property that they have been being charged this for several years, and they brought it to our attention this year saying, I don't receive any of these infrastructure services because you can't get to my property at all. So it wasn't much money, as you can tell, it was only a couple $1,000, but we rebated them that because it seemed like the right thing to do. So it was only about it wasn't a lot of money, but
I have 2 big.
oh, well, come talk. Yeah, so basically, I just put a note in there just so you could see why we were different from the budget, that's all. Yeah, the of and on.
Yeah,
It
just-
should say credit on a resident,
Thank
the
you.
of is,
Okay,
yeah,
I hope that gets fixed. Thank
okay,
you.
no problem,
And
do it right now.
page 5,
Excuse me.
which would be page 6, I think, in the difference between, oh, here's the page 7. Lost it.
Nothing.
The utility, how did that happen? Lost it. I'll just move on to the next one, which is about the the summary of remuneration for council members, and it's on page 11. I'm just wondering, why is it so low? Is it because some of the costs are assigned somewhere else?
Are you looking at, well, the mayor's remuneration is broken out separately than the rest of council?
But isn't the mayor's remuneration higher than 18,000?
Yes, but it's taken out somewhere.
I'd have to look, I can't get onto the end drive right now, but I'd have to look to see, I'm trying to remember if my payroll schedule allocates, like, for example, my pay is allocated amongst probably 15 different.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here.
So I'm trying to remember if the council,
something.
yeah, there's something, but I
I
can't.
think it's the utility.
It came up last
But
year.
for the public and for me, I think it's very important to be absolutely clear about the remuneration, the actual amounts, and somehow to provide the actual amounts of council remuneration.
So I think last year I provided council a salary scale. And there was no specific anything on it, but it did show the salary scale of the different levels that we have here. And I believe council was on it as well, which would show the total.
So.
Well, it has nothing to do with staff.
Yeah, I can.
It's
No, but I'm saying I think this was in the same thing. It was the salary scale, but it also included council.
Yeah, so that I can.
Yes,
So
sure.
actually,
Okay.
I think Penny, in the public document at the end, we actually decided in the final version that it needed a specific breakout that included the council compensation, the full council compensation. Itemized for each of you, which is on the budget summary page in the document, with the public budget document from last year. Because of this issue, because the utilities pay a portion of your remuneration.
Okay, so,
And so we have a note to cover the difference, so the note in the budget was at 29,136 for the mayor. So the portion of that in town general is the 18,000, and the remainder
right,
is to the utilities, because you are the governing body of those utilities. So
Yeah.
it's the same point that Councilor Paul Freeman made earlier about my salary and Adam's salary, the utilities also do that with respect to you. So it's noted in the budget to make sure people
Yeah.
do know.
good,
the full
okay,
compensation.
thank you for that, and I still wonder, because this is the first time we actually see the reference to council payment remuneration, that could there be a note here that the remuneration is paid from different sources? This is not the full. Is that possible? Is that asking too much or confusing the issue too much?
No, if you're asking it, then chances are others as well. So I think what the CAO was saying is that was supposed to provide the clarity, but
It comes at the end, doesn't it? That
it would
statement?
come in the package with the
No,
budget.
the public version is on the summary page, so it's actually just before you get down to
Oh, the
the
sub-
detail, yeah.
It'll be at the front end.
Yeah, it's at the front.
But we could put maybe a note saying, please see,
Yeah.
would that be?
Yes, that would help.
Perfect. We'll
Okay.
tie it all together.
Thank you.
No
Yeah, I'm
problem.
gonna see what we had done last time.
And that helps, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't have that note last time, so we'll make
Yeah,
that change.
yeah,
this time.
okay. And then way along on page 60, the digital version, so it's probably, it's about the solar farm maintenance at 50,000. Is that gonna get to be more and more as years go by?
Well, the solar farm maintenance is three things. It's the annual maintenance work that's.
60. Page 60?
It's probably
Okay.
page 62 or. I'm just going from the solar garden maintenance, yeah, it's 52.
Yeah, so this will be sort of referred to in more detail in the upcoming report to the next meeting, but essentially it's to the next meeting council, but essentially it's the insurance costs associated with the solar garden, the vegetation maintenance costs
Goats.
associated. Yeah, sheep. And then the like actual technical maintenance and checks. So the technical maintenance element is projected to increase throughout the life. Insurance is difficult to predict, but we did it with a multiplier, just CPI kind of thing.
Okay,
And then, we're experimenting with vegetation maintenance, so that one is probably the most under our control to find the lower cost solutions, and I think it will get better slightly over the first couple of years, so as we fine tune the number of visits and things like that. But I mean, we're talking less than $5,000 a
yeah,
difference.
okay, great, thank you.
And the employee benefits, is that towards the environment? Climate change staff person, is that the person who looks after
And
the?
the electrical utility?
No, distribution costs.
Yeah, this is the electrical utility, this isn't solar.
Okay,
energy, so-
okay,
So this would just be the benefits,
Oh.
like their power line technician.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, we actually don't cost any of the climate and energy position to the electrical utility at this time. We did in the initial couple of years, even though there is, still ongoing work provided by that position to the utility. And so we've talked about like how we attribute certain costs over to the utility, but I don't believe in this recent budget, we didn't allocate any of that position's costs over, and I don't think we have for a couple of years.
Yes, but there, I found the item I couldn't find. It's on page 7. And it's the utility contribution to town overhead.
So that's an annual entry that I make.
The quantification of the wages that we described from staff that are directed over to the utility that arguably would not be affected by, the utility not operating. It's not
Right.
any utility staff like the PLPs, just staff in the office
Yeah,
here
yeah,
for time
okay.
spent, yeah.
And why the difference between 42,000 and 56,000?
Well, the 42,000 would be the last 3 quarters, and then the
So that's just 3
56.
quarters, okay.
Yeah, so this is a Q3 report, so
Okay.
one more quarter will bring us to the 56, so it's just a third of the, or
Okay, that's
3
another
quarters.
quarter, okay.
Correct, yeah, exactly.
So-
Good
And I
question.
have one other question, which is sort of more generic. That has to do with reserves. I know there is a page on reserves somewhere. Or transfers.
Yeah,
Um,
to be in the fiscal services
so-
section.
One of the questions that has come up in the public and elsewhere is about maintaining an operating reserve. I hope I'm speaking the right language here, and always having either they define differently at different times. Sometimes it's 6 months operating. What are some of the other ways it's been, other times it's been a percentage of the overall operating budget? So is this shown anywhere in our, but in our when the budget, when it comes, or is this gonna be discussed by the new committees when we have a new reserves policy?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, in the past, the operating reserve transfer is a subject of debate each year. There's no defined target. And it actually is helpful to staff in this particular type of session. Because defining a target, and we haven't done that because it was referred to the finance committee, which is yet to meet. But it's recruiting now, if you're watching and you're interested in the stuff. That target would help staff to say whether a tax rate increase might be justifiable in order to maintain a reserve target. Which is why we usually don't put money into the operating reserve.
I guess I'm still confused about why we didn't do it sooner. I mean, I think we heard the municipal advisor tell us 12 years ago to have an operating reserve of 6 months.
I mean, I don't wanna be too opinionated about it, but I would say is that the only way to get there is to increase rates. So, yeah.
Do you know what page the reserve,
I can't find it.
the other reserves is on?
So the fiscal services, it would be toward,
Yeah, it's not the balance of reserves, it's transfers to and from the reserves that are in the current
That's page
fiscal year.
37.
Just for clarity. In the budget document, you get the balance of reserves and the impacts in the current year. But in this projection document, all you're getting is Ashley's projections with the to from reserve numbers in the
Yeah.
projection have changed.
yeah,
So it's to come.
But is it
Yeah.
fair to say that of the $350,000 surplus? Most of that can be allocated to whatever reserve we want to put it in?
yeah, I
mean,
think,
if council follows past practice, the surplus resulting from deemed transfer tax should be put into a capital and not operating reserve. However, we have in the past looked at whether the operating reserve balance required some potential diversion of funds. So, that's council's prerogative. It's not lost in policy. That's another reason why we could have a reserve policy on that issue. But traditionally, the surplus for deed transfer would accrue to
Yeah,
capital reserves.
fair enough, but that's arguably only $100,000 or so, maybe 120. The rest of there's a significant amount of that surplus that comes from being positive to budget in other operating areas.
And the fire surplus, if, it seems like there's a surplus in fire as well, would obviously go into the fire equipment reserve.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. Anything else not from those sources would be at council's discretion. And actually, the prior 2 years of surpluses were not allocated to a reserve. So at the end of the audit for 25-26, we would have a sense of, what are the surpluses of those years and would we transfer them into operating reserves?
So that money's just floating around out there somewhere.
Well, it's in the operating fund,
Yeah.
which is, as good as the operating reserve for cash flow, not as good as the operating reserve in the sense that it's not locked in.
Well, no, it's all one bank account anyway.
Yeah.
I see, sure.
so did we, I guess I should ask first, does anybody have a charger, because my computer's about to die and I left it at home?
I intentionally leave money at home.
A charger for.
For the laptop,
Oh, yes, I do.
here. Oh, thank you very much, and then did we wanna go around, are there any more questions, I guess we first?
Well, I'm still
We
looking for
lost-
the reserves page, if anyone.
It's on page what was it?
30.
It's just the transfers, it's not actual.
Yeah, it's not the summary that you
Okay.
will see.
You will see.
Yeah, it's very similar to what you would have saw in the Q2 report.
30?
Hold on.
Nebula.
Yes.
One of the main things you see is that we didn't pull some of the transfers from dedicated reserves such as
Right.
wastewater and stormwater that are intended to
37,
cover
38.
explicit initiatives that didn't move forward to the point of requiring those funds within the fiscal year. So the stormwater reserve would still be expected to fund those stormwater initiatives that will just be cash flowed in the upcoming year. So we'll just see the reserve transfer and the expenditure for a project move into the new year. Like the simplest example of that is we got money from the FCM to do an analysis of stormwater within Jubilee Park and the pond there. And we didn't actually get to engaging the consultant on that. And so we'll be doing that, and we've got an extension, we'll be doing that in the new fiscal year. Our share of that work was to be covered from the stormwater reserve. So without having that cost, both the reserve, but we also didn't have the cost, and both of them will just appear in the new budget. So that's a common thing, just to cover like what happens within a year, not exactly lining up with the plan. And why you need to make sure those reserve transfers don't happen, like just because we budgeted them. So you go and look at the actual expenditure that they correlate to, and then you reduce the transfer by whatever amount the expenditure was reduced for. So that's the only real difference from budgeted transfers in this document, just, in terms of what was being referred to as this page on reserve.
Are we going around?
Yeah, so Mayor, this will pass this back to you, I think, because we've done our
Okay.
presentation, and now is an opportunity for some counselors to have comments on what we might want to look at in the draft.
Sure. All right, does anyone have anything they want to bring?
Sure.
Okay, Councilor Coffman?
A couple of questions. The first relates to, I think it's page 4 and 5 or thereabouts. It's working on the projections for 26, 27 from 25, 26, I guess, in terms of tax rates and assessment values and so on, which implicitly leads you to how much tax rates would go up. Is that a subject for discussion now, or is that for later on when we have a more fulsome discussion, because it's obviously where people's focus ends up?
I'm fine either way. These assessment numbers for 26, 27, based on 25, 26 are up to date from, so this is probably the only real budget document that you have in this pile right now. So thank you for noticing that. Yeah, so,
Oh, we didn't talk about the assessment.
yeah, well, nope, we're segue right here. So I'm fine with, if you want to have a discussion on it, the more information you can provide me, the better for our first budget meeting. If you have comments, thoughts.
Did you want to speak to the assessment roll though, just because we didn't cover it? Pardon, I'm sorry, I totally missed that.
No, that's okay. It was after the summary, so that's why we
Yeah.
haven't gotten to it yet. But yeah, just for especially for the new counselors. So basically after the first page, there's the assessment roll, and this is basically taking the values of all the different tax buckets. So commercial, private, long-term care facility.
It's got its own.
It is big enough that she gets her own line, so this was requested a couple of years ago. It is listed as residential, but it's just such a substantial piece of property and income that we break it out separately.
Maybe we should do a quick barometer check though. That was being done during the phase-in of the assessment during the construction of the building. And it was jumping up in value considerably with each phase of construction. So I'm wondering if at this point, where it's fully realized and has been for a year, if in the draft budget, getting feedback, if we should just consolidate that back in. Like, I think the breakout was relevant for a particular time, but. So actually, I'm just asking, I'm just
Yeah, it's a
trying to
great
call
question.
somebody, but does anyone feel that it's still necessary to break out the long-term care facility impact on revenues in next year's budget?
It's classified as commercial, is it? No, it's not. It's
Residential.
That's right.
It
yeah.
used to be
Yeah,
both,
right.
but
It's the biggest residential that we've got,
correct.
right?
But is part of it, like, are the dining rooms and stuff supposed to be broken out, or are they? still-
Not anymore,
Not
like,
anymore.
They've appealed their way to full
Oh,
residential.
yes,
assessment.
yes.
Okay,
I've called and questioned if it did not make sense to me, just,
okay,
but they,
okay,
yeah.
I
and-
know most long-term are divided into commercial. and
Yes,
residential.
exactly.
Are they?
Yeah, I think there's the argument is about accessory commercial versus commercial, like this is purely for the purpose of running the residential.
Yeah, it's,
I think
just
it's
so,
something
like,
to do with that it got into, cause
yeah.
if
there's
they
a
rented
fine
space within the
limiting.
building for a third party service or something, that would trigger commercial assessment.
But if it had, but you think if there was a salon or something in
There
there,
is.
yeah, and
There
it would,
is.
it used to be, but it would, and when we broke it out before, commercial was quite small relative to the residential, and now it's just reassessed all to residential, but powers that be that are smarter than me, I guess, made the decision, so, yeah, so I guess that's a great question, is this
We'll
something?
take it
we wanna-
up with the PPSC chair.
Yeah.
That's-
That's,
be-
I was gonna say.
Chair of the Property Valuation Services Board, so,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, he usually has an input here right now, but that is a good question, is that something that, would there still be a taste to keep that broken out, to track it, or do you wanna just blend it in? It's,
I don't see the point of separating it out.
okay,
Yeah, I think the time.
Yeah, okay.
Well, the information will be available anyway.
absolutely, and yeah, okay, perfect, so that'll,
So sorry, get you back on track, but that was a good note to get.
yeah, no, that's great, again, this all helps smooth out and, increase the efficiency of the budget, so basically what I do is I show the prior year's assessment that's broken out, and it's broken out into two different allotments, so it's broken out by the residential, the resource commercial, and the tax rates, but then the next section is the fire tax. So that's where the fire tax rate is specifically taxed at a different amount, and we'll decide what that is, and that's where the discussion came that we withdrew the 0.5 cent last year and then put in the full cent this year. Again, up for discussion. And then the third sort of section would be the total of the two blend rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's resource?
So
Okay.
typically, a forested property that doesn't have a dwelling on it, even if not used for forestry activities, can be classified as resource.
Okay.
That's usually, so we just have some forested properties within town. I don't know that any of them are actually being, used as a commercial woodlot, but they're eligible to be classified, that was my understanding.
So for example, the Wenzel Woods so-called back here would be
Okay.
Yeah,
in that category.
yeah, so.
So I'm just showing the prior year's assessment to get an idea of the total revenue, and then the current year based on the same town tax rates with the amendment to the fire tax rate. So that, it's a pretty simple sheet. There is more details when the budget comes. We'll show sort of where the assessment revenue comes versus sort of new builds and that type of thing, and just some more statistics on exactly where the last year has come and from the report. I think Councilor Pufferman has a thought, comment,
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
sorry, Mayor, he was just looking at me.
I was looking at I had another question about the
Well,
assessment.
Brian, were you,
Yes,
okay, let Brian speak and then.
Oh, okay.
so on page 3, at the bottom of page 3 is the prior year assessment, is a total tax revenue of 3,588,977. Okay,
Mhm.
and the following page, the expected 25-26 rate brings in a total of 3,803,000. So that reflects, I think, a 6% increase based upon not town taxes, but assessment increases. And question becomes, how far in an age of 3% inflation should we be looking at assessments as a backstop for increased budget?
Valid question.
We didn't provide the breakout of construction versus new.
Not for this,
Yeah.
not for this, because we don't have all the information yet.
I think we tried to last time in this meeting.
Did we?
Yeah, but
That's my,
it does often help for that particular question
Yeah.
to know what's coming from new construction. Yeah.
This is last year as an example, I think that, I don't remember exactly what the inflation rate, but it was around 8%. If I remember correctly, and 5% of that was new construction and 3% of that was increase of assessments of existing.
You
property.
mean 10%?
Yeah.
Percent, I think, national inflation.
No.
Yeah.
it's way off on my CPI.
So yeah, to your point, Councillor Wilson, it was 5.74 last year overall. There was 4.55 from new construction and 1.36 from growth in assessment. So like a substantially smaller
So
part.
from the point of view of inflation clarity, it'd be useful to break that out so people understand they're not being flat rated at 6%.
Right.
Yeah, and we do in the budget, but we didn't today.
Yeah, and it's honestly a product of doing a budget and an audit at the same time. There's a lot, so my apologies for not bringing that to the table this evening.
So when a construction project ends and turns over to be a resident, do we change it mid-year or?
So we get reports throughout the year of any major reassessments.
Okay.
If it's not huge, I don't do anything with it because it would literally change the entire budget. I'd have to go through many processes. If there was something that was astronomical, I would bring it to council, but there's never been anything that.
So just, I guess, yeah, for the new councillors in the public, and it may help even give a little bit more illumination to that question. There's only one annual reassessment by property valuation services for new construction or anything that's happening.
Okay,
So it doesn't come in like quarterly, it only gets assessed once a year. The
okay,
nursing home took several years, which is the reason that it was phased in that way, because it
okay,
did have changes each year of its construction.
okay,
But typically you just pick up new construction at that one point and it would be by December. So if the construction happened before December, and then it would get into the roll for the next
Okay.
year. The
okay,
only change due to events that happens mid-year is destruction by fire. Council is permitted to allow the mid-year reduction in taxes based on destruction by fire.
that was newly passed last year, wasn't it?
No, we've
Legislation?
been able to do that.
Oh,
traditionally.
okay, because.
There might have been a change to it last year, but traditionally.
There was a change
It
with
was
the
something that
wildfire.
essentially you just said, oh, but yeah, there would have been a change. Traditionally, it was just a way to give relief to a property owner whose home had been destroyed by fire. But not taxed, by taxing them in a prorated way up to when it was destroyed and not,
Yeah.
But the other mid-year change you get isn't from events like new construction or fire,
Mhm.
it's from appeals. So it actually was.
Sorry, that's what I was
changes that come
referring
in
to.
After the budget, those are appeals and they only go in one direction. So typically, we just hope that we end up with most of the assessment that we thought we were gonna be working with as of the budget approval. Because PBSC will grant reductions to the assessment on appeal throughout the year. And Ashley gets informed about that and can dispute that, but ultimately they do those and that does reduce what we get in the year.
Anyway,
Um,
yes. Okay.
Oh, I had a question about assessment, and I think I figured it out, but the comments that Councillor Palfreman just made about rates being based mainly on assessment. Because in some jurisdictions, I think in Manitoba, they base their tax rates or property assessments partly on income and partly on assessment. I have to say that way back in 2012, when second time I ran for council, I said I was going to try and advocate for some kind of change in that system. I haven't done very well at that.
I'm sorry to keep doing this,
Yes.
but for the new members and anyone watching, the imperfect system we have to attempt that, which Councilor Carver has made a purpose of reviewing and enhancing on prior years, we may wish to this year, is the rebate that is provided on the basis of income. So while the property value and tax is determined wholly on the basis of the value of the assessment, we then allow for a reduction in that on the basis of income. And that's a process that grants back, and you do have to apply for it, because we don't know people's income, so it's often said, well, why don't you just do this automatically, well, we don't have access to that information. So we will definitely make a point of reviewing again, and, looking at how the low income stacks up against, income changes in the community as reported by Statistics Canada. And we, do tend to try to keep pace. I think MODL in their draft budget is making another substantial increase in their low income rebate. Ours is undersubscribed according to Ashley's projection.
Yeah,
So it's something we might wanna look at.
it's never
closely.
been taken up, but yeah.
It's getting closer to the budget amount. We always
Mhm.
budget an amount based on a guess of who's gonna qualify.
Yeah,
Do you know what a rate is, or a rate for a percentage of people that do it? An idea.
I don't have it in front of me. I will get before I present every budget, I get a full list of everything. We've actually still have people coming in right now applying for it. So I will have a full list that I'll be able to give you like some stats on.
Okay.
But essentially, it's a staggered system, so that like based on your income, you qualify for a different level of rebate.
Yeah.
So what we do for the stats is we can say how many people qualified at each level.
Yeah.
There's substantially more people qualified for a smaller rebate,
Mhm.
because you would have to have extremely low income to qualify for the deepest rebate.
Yeah.
And so some of the discussions are the qualifying levels can change based on, changes in income levels statistically. But also the extent of the rebate can change based on growth and assessment. So if assessments are growing, the amount of the rebate may need to change.
Yeah.
If wages are changing, the qualifying thresholds may need to change. Both things are at council's discretion.
And it's household income as well. It's not individual income, and we've had some complex issues with that as well.
Well, I don't qualify anymore.
Yeah.
I keep giving my dad, yes, a low income. I know, that's why I don't qualify.
Oh, Councillor Copeland.
Yeah, one more, the existing, excuse me, town debt, related to the solar garden is covered in the solar garden financials of $180,000 debt and interest, debt service and interest. This year we've got $5 million or thereabouts coming on board for Edgewater Street, which will go on to long-term venturing, which will cost us, I presume, 5 times $180,000. So is that provided for in the budget, is operating costs?
Yeah,
So unfortunately, it's gonna have to be a note, because they won't actually kick in the 26-27 budget, but I.
The first payments will be the following year.
Yeah,
No,
this is great.
okay.
So I think we'll have to make a note about the projection.
Yeah,
We have
I
this projection sheet now for the debt. So we can update that based,
Yeah.
that was an addition to the budget last year. The council wanted more detail on the debentures and, the status
Yeah.
of future debentures. So that would really sharpen the pencils on the Edgewater projection, but it won't impact the 26-27 operating budget.
Okay, in part, the concern is just looking forward. This isn't the end of the road in terms of large capital projects that we face. So looking at the budgets, one has to consider room creation for that kind of debt. Otherwise, taxes go up a fair bit. That's the point.
I think the schedule that council requested last year really provided a great consolidated, here is all our debt, this is what we have, this is what it's costing us. And I think that anyone that was questioning, where is it all, what is it, I think that was a great addition to the budget.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the look forward.
Yeah, and that's what we were doing at the bottom of that spreadsheet last year is,
Yeah.
so I will do that for Edgewater
So
and,
we try to work backwards from the portion of the capital budget that is projected to be paid from debt,
Yeah,
and then work that into the projection
Yeah.
of future debt. So that will also update, when we update the capital budget projections, to try to flow back into the projected debenture.
Any other questions, any sections?
well, I suppose that's the one more.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
that's why we're here,
This
Oh,
is-
dear,
this is
dear.
what-
this is great.
I seem to be throwing spokes. Anyway, As you mentioned, Ashley, salaries are split all over the place.
Mhm.
We have no real number, as far as I know, of what the operating costs are of this building and stuff. The administrative parts of the exercise. It would be probably useful because the comments have been made clearly in the public about increased staffing and costs and so on and so forth, and I haven't got a clue, yeah.
So I think last year we did provide a salary scale. And I believe, I don't remember if we plotted it for the public.
We provided a total number in the same note as the total council remuneration. It brought all the staff costs into one place.
Okay.
And it gave my full compensation and the manager of finance full compensation. But I guess we could slightly enhance it by breaking the staff portion down by department. Cause you were trying to
Like
say.
total by
Like
department.
what spoke to,
Yeah.
you know, public works versus admin.
Sure.
That distinction could probably be made in
Yeah.
that same
That's a good
note.
idea.
Cause it's not gonna come through clearly in the detail, but it could come through clearly in the note.
Okay.
Yeah, how about that? And then we can, yeah. Okay.
Council
You
Wilson.
made that note, right? Cause I don't think that's a minutes note, I think that's a budget note, okay, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that I implied in my note 10 days or so ago, and I think I hope it's worth looking at is our overall staffing. To your point, we backfilled quite correctly, I think, and I know we're still short of finance people, but we have communications people, we have secretaries, we have several other people floating around, and I think it's important that we sit down and take stock and make sure we've got the right people in the right spots doing the right things. After having, we've had a year or so to look at it, just to make sure we're where we want to be. I'm not saying we need to reduce staff, or maybe we need to enhance staff, but we need to look every year, I think.
And I think just a quick preliminary comment on that, 'cause it's appropriate that we're not, seeing, I would agree with you, I don't think we're seeing a year where there will be recommendations for new staff positions, so that we've had quite a bit of that over prior years, I would not be.
Trying to fill some.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to get the most out of the positions council has already approved, and there's certainly work to be done on that basis at the administrative level. So I don't think we're coming into the year with any new staffing requests. We have, as always, analyzed public works and some of the contracting and things that they do, and whether there could be savings doing them in-house. Janitorial was particularly analyzed heavily. The challenge, of course, with janitorial being performed in-house is the hours of the public washroom operation. And in the end, we did not determine that it would be more cost effective to bring it in-house. We are trying to time our janitorial services tender, because we're on to new janitorial services contract by the end of the first quarter. We're trying to time that so that we will have the results of the tender within the budget process, so that we can at least discuss with council what our projections are relative to public works analysis on what the in-house costs would have been. But our in-house analysis did conclude that we probably will not be in a position to save money by bringing janitorial in-house. It used to be an in-house service. We went out to contract to sort of see how that would work. It's very expensive, but we still struggle to find a way to reduce those costs by bringing it in-house. So just wanted to comment, like, we do go through all these things about staff positions.
We need quality too. I've heard only good things about our washrooms, our public washrooms. But in here in the building, those services need to be improved.
That's certainly
Right, so, not Tuesday and Thursday have cleaning days, because in between, there's some gaps.
Part of the evaluation of the, proposals will obviously be with that eye.
Yes.
But also in order to keep, costs relatively low, we do schedule things. And one of the improvements we would have seen with might in the future, if it could be justified, with the bringing in-house janitorial service would be an expected service improvement within our, offices,
Right.
public works and the fire station.
Right.
It's, because those are within work hours, so
Yes,
it's not a big
yes.
issue. It's just that the cost to also accommodate the public washrooms is so difficult, and if you take the public washrooms out, the scale of our janitorial work is not large enough. So that's where we're stuck right now, but we'll keep exploring options and we'll see where the tender goes. And yes, there have been some concerns to ensure that the quality is there
Yeah.
from whatever company we select.
Yes.
The only other thing I have is, and I know it'll become a bit of a bone of contention at our first budget meeting, but I assume you're gonna come back with a budget that leaves rates static in all categories.
Yeah, I think we've been clear, the expectation,
yeah.
yeah.
So I'll get into what commercial should really be.
Sorry.
There.
So tax, okay,
So yeah, the fire rate was the exception.
Yeah,
And the fire rate, we were to put the 1 cent increase in. I think in Councillor Finney's absence, I did say before we get on here, maybe I'll say that we will, I think, also be requested to provide some analysis of what a comparative commercial rate would look like if the same differential between commercial and residential rates were applied to the fire rate. Because that is something that Deputy Mayor Feeney, I should say, has been really big on including in our analysis this year. Because traditionally, obviously, fire was included in the general tax rate and there was no fire specific rate. The general tax rate is charged differentially at a different rate to commercial business and residential property. But when we broke out the fire rate several years ago, we broke it out as a single rate. As a result, the commercial rate and the residential rate were reduced by the same amount. And relatively speaking, that resulted in a difference in terms of how the fire rate is apportioned to commercial. They pay less relatively of the fire rate than they were under the previous system. Municipalities are in different places on this. The ones that don't break it out by default are charging a differential rate, but they don't say that. Halifax breaks it out as a differential rate. Most units don't have, that do have a broke out fire rate, don't have a differentiated commercial fire rate. So it is a good discussion. At the end of the day, I think it'd be the same total revenue. It's more of an analysis about whether to redistribute the burden so that there would be a slight benefit to the residential ratepayer. And I don't know how material that is. We haven't done the analysis, or I think Joe may have.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a reasonable thing to do, but fair enough.
But that's the only tax change that we're talking about in the DAP budget.
well, last year we did a comparative analysis for residential rates as well, as I recall.
Between communities, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, they always do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we'll do
I'm
that.
doing that again.
okay,
Karen-
oh, sorry,
Councillor-
thank you,
sorry.
Council,
Get late.
for waiting,
Word.
I was writing that we should.
Right. I'm kind of still processing questions because that's the first time I've seen this. So
Sure.
it's just understanding. My question is, in the planning, for the new provincial budget, obviously, and some of the cuts. Has anybody done a bit of a pre-scan of things that we're gonna have to kind of measure for in our planning? I know you talked briefly about some of the grants that may or may not be available. But anyway, just thought any of this other stuff at this stage.
Yeah, I don't think that the provincial budget is in this first year going to have very much impact on our operating budget. Most of the provincial grants that have been eliminated were capital or sort of capital supporting, like engineering and stuff in nature.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't really be like year to year beneficial to us.
Yeah,
Obviously, that there will be significant impacts, just not in terms of the operating budget right away.
yeah,
What we're mostly seeing in terms of the challenge of operating on, with no tax rate increase, and where the assessment rate increase that has been, or so the assessment increase or the new construction assessment values that has been referenced, generating new revenue is going to be in large part absorbed by increases in those fixed external costs and non-fixed external costs, which is the council has electively added additional services like the protection of privacy service through the Municipal Joint Services Board into this year's budget. So I think our shared services and external costs are probably going to eat up about half, I would say at this point, of the projection in terms of new revenue that's available to us from growth and assessment or construction. And then, if you just take CPI on all of our fixed chemical costs and staffing costs, that's the other half. Which, so it's a good thing we're not talking about substantial increases in staff levels or anything, because that would not be achievable within that budget.
You'll notice a lot of our services like Remo
Yeah.
has increased
Right.
significantly. At least for us, and you'll notice a bigger one because they're trying to do a different formula with our partners and have a baseline that everyone pays and then be added on according to your they'll have a formula for your growth and your population. So
Right.
you will notice in the numbers, that Mahone Bay takes a big jump because we were paying the least of all the municipalities because
Yeah.
we always were the lowest paying partner. So some of those adjustments you're going to see this year and probably coming in the next 2-3 years, I would see changes.
Yeah.
Right. And what else you may see is, there'll be more downloading, like, things haven't lowered so much, like in the senior safety, like our givings, but our mandate and our workload for that has grown. And we do need another staff person.
Yeah.
And we are trying to get funding for that, but if we don't, and we want to provide, right now, we're just triaging.
Sure.
The work has become so complex, so you're going to see some services just because of downloading to the or cut back somewhere else, we're going to have to be providing some of the services to see, like you mentioned today about how much mental health the policing statistics are showing that are being done, and so, a lot of the money that we're spending on policing is actually a health issue, but it's coming out of our pockets because every time the RCMP go and make a mental health call, it comes off what our allotment is. So if you have 3 cars show up for an attempted suicide, for example, and then you have an EHS vehicle have to come, and then someone sit at the hospital for several hours to be seen by a health practitioner.
Yeah.
That all comes off our allotment of services, so
Interesting.
so
So,
builds up.
what's your conjecture on when that allocation is exceeded? We get a much bigger bill, we have no choice.
We have no choice.
Or the services get limited.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
And then we have to hire that person. We have to pay for our own person, like Remo. We would have to develop our own Remo program and staff person, pay a staff person.
Yes, well, that's because it's legislated, but
Yes.
other things are not legislated.
No, but if we were to pay for our waste management, for example, we're getting a cheaper rate because of the volume, right?
I think the comment was more in terms of downloading.
Oh.
So like, for example, if the museum's just restored.
So the
then
museum
that's-
going to come to us and ask for it to make up what the province.
Yeah.
We're gonna see more and more of that.
Yes, well, the Bridgewater already has, and Mayor David has said he would support wildcarding and the museum.
Yeah,
And those ones are in principle discretionary, but obviously it's a difficult.
Precisely,
And
precisely.
library is gonna be asking for more.
Yeah.
Their funding was not cut, but it
Yes.
hasn't increased, and the
mhm,
demands for services will increase as.
yes,
as-
because we're doing a lot of other people's work.
So,
Yes.
There's no easy solution.
No,
You can't just keep saying yes, yes, yes.
right,
The municipalities being close to the people are often, find it difficult to not absorb downloading from other levels of government because you're right here in the community and, they're a little further removed, but
and they add to our quality of life and the attraction of our communities.
But it is ultimately your stewardship of the purse, like you can't
Yes.
just assume every downloaded services becomes luck.
Yeah.
So that's part of the budget process,
It's-
absolutely.
it's-
Yeah,
Keep it
hard
balanced.
decisions sometimes to make.
So, yeah, I guess we should say, let's call it final statements from
Yeah,
everyone,
or-
since we have had a lot of input, we
Yeah.
may not have that much.
Were
to
there
add.
any wishes and dreams
Yeah.
that a hockey rink from Council Wilson or ice surface for the winter?
And obviously, we didn't touch the capital budget
Let's talk about
at all.
libraries. I always said you should never be allowed to call a place a town unless it has a library in Hardwick.
We have a library.
So,
A mobile-
Yeah, we don't. have a library.
I do have one comment, and that is that, I've watched these budgets for years and I think they've done a really good job this year in keeping costs under control. I know that we've spent a lot of money, but I think it's well spent, carefully spent. And, I look forward to this year's budget being, even more carefully crafted.
And if I could comment, going through all this afternoon, I really think it's well managed. I think the town was well managed. Looking at these numbers and projected budget and what was actually spent and now,
But if you use fewer people.
I'd like to add that if we're looking for like little add-ons, we have talked about doing something Canada Day here in town. And I would really like to see, well, not that costly, Brian. So.
I wanted to.
I think the grants have gone for those, have they?
Scotia's first Canada Day drone show.
We're being
Yeah.
inundated with ads over the
I-
last several weeks. There's so many ads we're getting
Yeah.
now municipally.
yeah.
We've got drones. Anybody want a drone show? We could schedule.
They're
drones.
dog friendly.
Companies are-
They're really cool. I've
Yeah.
seen them
They're
at
still-
Disney.
they're wonderful.
$120,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they attack you, it's not great either.
We'll
but
need a
they're-
donor. We'll need a.
Yeah, but
I
they're.
think I
really cool.
referenced this before, how there are also some great videos out of the UK of people attaching those same LEDs that are on drones to sheep and having their sheepdogs chase them around to create solar patterns. And I think that might be affordable.
We have
We
sheep.
we should. One is already calling them agrovoltaics for their role in the solar garden, so maybe we have something we can do for Canada Day with the sheep. Anyway, getting late and silly. So-
That's awesome. I love it. So, okay, so so Canada Day. Are we looking for like a grant or a?
I'm not sure,
It's a good
the
place to
creative
start.
mind, but if there's.
Would you
even
like to
if-
apply for a grant?
Pardon? Well, I don't know if it's something that we would offer to an organization to organize, or whether we would just have an event at the bandstand, for example, with a cake and.
You're saying this might be enough, because I know that the
Okay.
Mahoma Music Association has for several years been wanting to do a big Canada Day thing at the band.
Who?
Yeah.
The Mahoma Music Association.
music-
these are summer series. I think what it comes down to is whether they're gonna request a larger grant. They have until March 31st to put that in if they're watching, so
Yeah.
maybe there's the pitch.
I hear so many people who don't drive and, can't join other communities, or they're overcrowded, and it causes them. But, from, it'd be nice, it
Yeah,
doesn't
we're
have,
all
it
little
can be whatever we want it to be, it doesn't have to be massive, it could just be, 1 or 2 hour event, it could be something that we do at the nursing home with, the community at the nursing
That's a nice
home,
idea.
and invite, if there's many possibilities.
I would like to see closer collaboration with the business community. Maybe the business community would like to do some sort of festival. A big event.
Bouncy castles.
Yeah, yes,
Two questions and then a comment, and, went on the campaign trail, just talking to people. I had numerous people come to me saying, we should bring back the Wooden Boat Festival. And anyway, and I've heard that there was lots of administration, there were challenges, volunteers. But, and I don't know what the council's expense in any of that would be, but I know that there's effort there. Anyway, I just brought that up just because.
are all those people willing to
I know that
be on the board, because that's what
Again.
happened, they burnt out the volunteers.
Yeah, that's what I was told too.
Yeah.
And then I guess my other question is we just, and this is off budget, but from those grants and application, those applications that we have open, are we getting applications in?
We tend to get them to trickle in about now, and then the last week of March, they tend to really come in, so I'd say we have received maybe 5.
Okay.
I would expect to see another 10 come in the next week or so,
The
just
deadline's March
March,
13th.
yeah, so it tends to be towards the end, so that they kind of all come in at once, so.
Yeah, we do tend
Yeah,
to, as we get towards the end.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that as well, so, but just for, to disambiguate that there are also subsidies in the budget, and that the difference has been that the town has, made multi-year agreements
Yeah.
with organizations operating recreational services on our premises, so Mahone Bay United, Pool Society, and those don't go through the grants to organizations program, and so you'll recognize that there was a specific request made by Mahone Bay United that's been referred to budget for changes in their operating subsidy. And that's outside the grants program. And we have received the request as well from the next council meeting from the Pool Society. So those are also coming in, and they are, generally speaking, increasing
Yes.
from all parties.
Right,
Mhm.
right, okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to check whether Ashley and Dylan have seen the letter that Joe wrote in February 23rd, where he had quite a lot to say. Because it was only sent to council.
I have
Not staff.
January 27 that he sent,
February 20,
and then
this
there
is
was one
February
in February.
23rd.
I don't have anything. from
Maybe
that
you
meeting.
reported it, I mean, Joe
Okay.
sends us a lot of emails too, so it could have all been covered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll forward it. So is it possible to include in the budget something called beautification? A line item called beautification, which would include things like planting,
Watering.
training, horticulture, training, trees. That's environment. But is that possible?
I thought I saw them.
Well, they're all in there, but it's more about the presentation.
Yeah,
Um, so all of the, under transportation, the vegetation budget there is, like, that's covering specifically the planting and maintenance of
Mhm.
trees.
And then the watering of the plants, the
That's
pots and so on, the planters.
Yeah, well, so they're,
that's a grant, isn't it?
well, no, now that's
No.
become general public works expense,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Oh, right,
That's
they took
starting
it
to be
over,
the subject of a note, and it's just kind of a question of how you construct the
Mhm.
note, so maybe you could email, like, we're just gonna try to figure out a good note, if it would
Yeah,
work,
okay.
say, as we did with the pulling the salaries together, let's pull these details, but ultimately we
Yeah.
won't actually be able to take it out of the salary line, because that's gonna be more
Yeah, it's
confusing.
complicated. So where I'm coming from partly is to be able to demonstrate to communities in Bloom that the town is actively contributing financially and with staff
And in
support.
kind as well,
And in
like,
yeah.
be on that budget line too, because they do.
Well, I'll just leave that with you.
Hmm, okay,
And I share everybody else's concern about keeping the costs to the public as low as possible. I mean, I think members of the public have to acknowledge that costs are going up everywhere, everybody's. So that, to keep costs, their rates stable without any change, we're gonna have to make some cuts and, not be, so I'm hoping that we have a very quiet year this year. No projects.
The beautification. So page 27, I knew I saw that line somewhere. There was $1,000 budgeted, spent 7,000.
we made it run pretty.
Well, sometimes what happens there is just, there's a capitalized item that didn't get capitalized yet in Ashley's projection. So it may not be that we spent anything at all, that 7,000 might have been
part of a project. As we do misallocate, sometimes it has to be cleaned up as we approach the budget.
Yeah.
Making sure that things that are capital projects are actually pulled from operating.
Yeah, we had to pull
I
a
think
bunch
that's,
out
I
of
think
public
that's part
works.
of the issue I mentioned
That could
earlier,
be,
but I'm
yeah.
seeing some errors too, because I think there's a little bit of capital coming through on the fund, on the revenue side too, so we'll make sure that's addressed.
So keeping costs as low as possible for the residents. And I would also really like to see the reserves policy done and that we start making a contribution towards a target. In reserves so that we can gradually build up.
So something to consider for that, and we probably won't get it done, but if we did refer it to the finance committee, and the finance committee is currently recruiting. So we have talked about when the first meetings of the audit and finance committees would be, once assembled. The audit committee, the thought is that, they probably would meet to receive the presentation on the 24-25 audit, because that's underway. I'm hoping we're talking about the third or fourth week of April.
I'm trying to pull it.
And I guess similarly, if a finance committee meeting were scheduled within a similar time frame within the month of April, that would enable them to at least have like a budget contextual discussion about the reserves policy. They may not be recommending a finished policy through the council, but we would have some input. That might be the most appropriate way to go, because I think there's no reason we wouldn't be able to schedule. But we'll have the members recruited by the first meeting in April, a 2-week turnaround, and a meeting.
Well, that depends on the nomination committee. Kevin?
And this is again, my being new here, but just understanding the process that we're gonna go through in the next several meetings.
Book every Friday morning off in your calendar in April.
Fair enough. But then we're gonna start to be just presented with new information as we get going. We're gonna start having those more detailed discussions about some of the budget criteria.
Yeah, essentially the first meeting each time is just presentation. They actually will answer questions and we'll take 3 or 4 hours just to absorb the information.
Yeah.
And then the second one, typically, in between, you guys can email, additional questions and thoughts.
Fair
The second one typically gives the opportunity for council to ask for changes. And then the third one, we're usually looking at a document that was revised on the basis of the changes that have been agreed to at the second one.
Yeah.
And then typically we have one more at least to just go over how those changes impacted the draft and maybe make a few more changes. And then it gets recommended to typically the first council meeting in May, except sometimes later, for a formal approval.
Yeah, perfect.
But I was just gonna say, just to understand, I think what we're gonna see in the first meeting is what we just saw tonight.
Yeah.
Except there'll be a new line with 26, 27.
Yes.
And I suppose 23, 24
Yeah,
go away.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, the projection will get a little more nuanced, because Ashley will have another month to see stuff come in. So we'll have a slightly more up-to-date projection as a result of numbers that have come in the coming 3 weeks. And then there's some errors, so we'll have to catch those. But other than that, the document you're seeing plus a new budget column will pretty much be the document.
Yeah, and then there'll be some supplementary, so there'll be sort of the long-term debt schedule, there'll be a little bit more on the assessment and sort of the shift on that.
And we get into the
The
reserve
grants,
funds detail.
so there'll be, it's as thick, if not thicker than this. And then basically we usually present, I focus more on the operating and Dylan is more capital.
Yeah.
And we'll each present our own, and we usually do the town and then we do the utilities separately and typically in a different meeting. But it's a lot of us sort of talking and then you guys asking questions and then coming back, absorbing the information for about a week and then coming back and asking more.
Perfect.
So that's more or less it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and if we need more time, we'll take it because it's an important document and that's what we do here, so. But yeah, ask any and all questions, and like I said before, if you see errors, please let me know because it's an Excel document and things can go awry very quickly. Yeah, so the more eyes on it, the better. Something smells funny, just let me know.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go into closed session? No? All right, well,
So moved.
So moved by Counselor Wilson, second by Counselor Culberman. All those in favor signify aye.
What are we voting on? To go into
Closed session to
Oh, thank you.
discuss, contract
For
negotiations.
contract negotiations
Yes.
discussion.
Okay,
Contract.
so,
Okay, I'll go deal with it, yeah, right.
okay,
Turn this off.
Be careful, let me know.
Alright.